weekend looks like a total washout. I wonder what I should do all weekend. Well, I guess I could build a giant 4,500 gallon aquarium. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, we're back with another installment of building the 4,500 gallon 33 footer. No, it's just another vlog in the fish room, but a lot of work is going in the 4,500, so it's kind of dominating the videos right now. Lots of progress. This thing is a beast. It is going to be insane. So let's stop talking about it and let me show you. Okay, as you can see, we got a little bit of an assembly line going here. We're building the 10-foot sections of framing, which is going to hold the floor. So you can see we have a 10 by 5.5 section here built, and it is now attached to the base. So this is what's going to be supporting the floor of our aquarium, which is going to be multiple layers of plywood, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So first of all, you got to make sure everything is square. Always make sure it's square. Get a good flat surface to work on. And of course, build these in manageable chunks, because as you can imagine, you start tying all this lumber together, it gets pretty heavy pretty quick. So everything is squared, and you want to make sure that you can either see where your screw holes are on the side or make markings so that when you're screwing down the plywood on top, you know where to make your lines, so you hit the 2x6 and not the air underneath. But so you want to, like I said, mark it on the side, and then you can chalk lines once you start screwing in the floor. We'll show that, of course, shortly. But yeah, so first section done, and it is fastened down to the base underneath. Not like it's going to go anywhere once it's got 30,000 pounds on it, but it gets, the more you tie everything together, the more rigidity you have. So it's a lot of sticks that when they're all stuck together, they become incredibly strong. And then of course, this is just the next section I'm working on here. So I square up the ends, and then I get the middle piece in, and then I measure, make sure we're the proper width all the way on the left, the middle and the right, and then essentially just go back in and fill in. So yeah, I got 2 more of these to do, and well, then a little extra after that. But 12-foot boards cost a lot more than 10-foot boards, so we'll just, tack a few feet onto the end, and we'll be good to go. And sometimes even the inspectors aren't right. In this case, she's giving me a hard time about making the tank only 33 feet long. She's thinking, why don't we go 45? I'm like, the room's not even that big. Your math is terrible. You do addition like a cat. I don't know what's wrong with you. We're sticking with 33 feet. We debated a little bit, and we decided we're going to go with that. So as you can see, we started with the framing 33 feet down that way, and we are all the way done. So we have the base, and we have the framing, the support for the floor, all in place. And I got to tell you, I mean, I knew the tank was big, but when you're building it, oh my gosh, this thing is huge. So each section, by the time I get to the end, I'm like, oh my, what have I done? What have I undertaken? But then once I finish, I'm rejuvenated again, and I'm like, all right, let's get on to the next stage. So stage 2 is done. Stage 1, the base where we're distributing weight. Stage 2, where we're building the framing for the floor. Now stage 3, we're putting on the subfloor. And you can see here the importance, first of all, everything being straight, and second of all, having everything line up. So there's a reason we spaced the joists like we did, 12-inch centers, so that the plywood will lay right on the middle of the joists where the seams are, so that it's well supported all the way down. Now this piece is just sitting there because before I put plywood down, I'm going to use construction adhesive. This is one of those things that I think is overlooked sometimes. It is a huge deal to always glue before you screw, especially when you're dealing with plywood. It's less of a thing for dimensional lumber, but for layment or plywood or sheathing, it's a huge deal. Because if you just have screws every 8 inches or whatever it is, you don't have, you're going to have buckling, albeit slight, very slight underneath. But the thing is when you're building plywood, fiberglass reinforced epoxy aquariums, rigidity is the key. You can literally be any shape you want as long as it's rigid and maintains that shape. You can make it work with the fiberglass and the epoxy. And it's incredibly strong if it's very, very rigid. So what are we going to do? We're going to put construction adhesive on all of the 2x6 joists that are under the subfloor here before we screw it down. That way we have a bond on every possible piece of surface. We're going to have it bonded. We're going to have that flood set subfloor stay incredibly rigid and in place. And as you see here, this is OSB plywood. Now this type of plywood is awesome for subfloor because its compression strength is awesome. So that's all we're asking it to do here, is to take a lot of compression loads sitting on it. What we don't want to use is this type of plywood for the top surface for the epoxy coat. What we're going to want for that is your traditional type of plywood with a very, very tight grain. We want that tight grain. We don't want a lot of gaps in between the grain that have to be filled or fiberglassed over or have copious amounts, copious coats of epoxy to fill. Because at the end, we need to end up with at least a 10 mil surface of epoxy built up. So the more, if you were to use a very wide grain with big, gaps in between there, that would just be bad for that. So we want a really tight grain for the top, and something like an OSB is absolutely fine for the compression layer underneath. Now in my other tanks, smaller tanks, I'll usually just put a 3/4 inch piece of this type of plywood for the bottom of the aquarium. But here, because the aquarium is so large, I have to do things a little differently. First of all, that many sheets of 3/4 inch is a bit of a bear to move by myself. And second of all, the cost is through the roof on that type of plywood right now. So we're going to end up with a thicker base, a 1 inch, so 1/2 inch OSB and 1/2 inch on the top ply coat for a 1 inch total. And these will be construction adhesive together and screwed, of course. So they will become one by the time I'm done with it, and we'll end up with a 1 inch subfloor for the base of our aquarium. So I'm going to get to putting these on, and after that, it gets really exciting because we start building up. That's when it really starts to look like something. So my assistant is here. She's clocked in for the day, and it's time to install a whole bunch of subfloor. And my buddy Gary's been up to it again, rescuing fish from stores, putting them with incompatible fish, and then calling me up to rescue them. So yeah, these look like they'll be the first new inhabitants for the estuary section of the Xingu River 33-footer we're building. It's some albino tigers and albino reds. He said they had some special names, but I don't know. We'll see when they get bigger, see if they turn out to be what he says, or if they're just regular albinos and reds. Not only are we going to build a 40,500 gallon aquarium, we're also going to answer the age-old question of how many tubes of liquid nails does it take to build a 4,500 gallon aquarium. Oh my gosh, it's a good thing I'm doing this tank first, because these other ones are going to be a breeze after doing the 4,500. So there it is, 33 feet of subfloor, glued and screwed. I don't know how many screws, and well, I do know how much glue. What do we got? Seven tubes of construction adhesive and a copious amount of screws. But we have a subfloor, so we are now ready to put the top coat on the subfloor. This guy over here, and yeah, that's at that point, this thing's really going to build up. Once the floor is done, we start doing the framing, and especially once I start framing out the wetland area, the other wetland area, and the different sections of the tank, it's really going to come together. But I don't know if it comes across in video, and I know I keep saying it because every time I work on it, I feel it. This thing is enormous. It's going to be something special. The Xingu Jungle Aquarium is going to be badass. So I was afraid this day might be coming because I noticed, if you don't recognize him, this is Bubba, my super red Severum. Obviously, he's been dead a little over 24 hours, and the plecos got to him a little bit. But yeah, he finished his life in the 750 up here, and I was checking. I've had him since 2015, so he had a good life. And unfortunately, I could see in the last few months he was slowing down quite a bit and not eating nearly as much and everything. And same sort of thing that happened when the electric blue Aquarium passed away. They just they get to that point in life. Well, I mean, I guess he just was very old, but it's a real bummer. Obviously, I've lost two really important fish from this tank from old age, the electric blue Aquarium and now the super red Severum. So it's definitely time to get some replacement fish for those guys. But this guy definitely deserves a good resting place. So well, it's time to take Bubba outside and dig him a hole, you know, some nice shady place by a tree, and put him to rest. I'm gonna have to film the 33-footer from the other room here. It's so long I can't get it in frame, but yeah, we have a base. Let me take you over there and we'll check it out. All right, so I gotta tell you, that is the most amount of work that I've ever done on an aquarium, and just to have the base done. That may not necessarily look like a ton, but there's a ton of work involved there, and a ton of construction adhesive. It's a good thing I bought a lot of that. But it is super important, as you can imagine, to have a very, very strong base when you're going to be building a 4,500 gallon aquarium on it. And I think it was a good decision to start with the 33-footer because it's all downhill from here. This thing is just massive. Obviously, I've built the 3,000. That was a 21-footer, but this is a whole nother level. I got to tell you, it is a lot of work. Each stage takes an enormous amount of materials and labor, but we are getting there. After each stage, I'm always thinking to myself, what have I got myself into? I go take a break for an hour, you know, get some water, refresh. I come down, I take a look at it, and I go, oh my God, this thing is gonna be badass. And I am back at it. We are gonna get this sucker done. So, stage 1 is complete. It's actually stage 4, so 1 being the base where we're distributing the weight, 2 being the subfloor joists where we're supporting the floor, stage 3 being the subfloor, and stage 4 being the top coat floor, where we will be able to do our fiberglassing and epoxy coat, because we'll have a nice tight grain for that. So from here, it builds up. It's really gonna look like something in the next installment, because we're gonna be building up. You're gonna be able to see the wetland filter, the bog filter, the different sections of the aquarium. It'll all make sense in this next video, because you'll see when the framing goes up, it falls right into place. So even if I don't get to the sheeting, just the framing, it'll make sense. You'll get an idea of what this beast is all about. So as you can see, this monster takes a ton of work, but it is going to be worth it. This is going to be an aquarium like no other. I mean, it's going to be nuts, and I think you'll really be able to see that in the next video. Once the framing's up, you'll really be able to appreciate where all the windows are and how big the filter is, how expansive it is. It's going to be crazy, and of course, all the fish from the 3,000 gallon Amazon will be moving into here, which is going to open that up for increasing Predator Bay from 1,800 to 3,000. So there's just an avalanche of awesome, amazing, huge projects that are going to take place. Plus, not to mention, we have 3 other tanks to finish in this room. Once even that's done and we move those other tanks around, and it's also going to open up some new tanks. So there's just a ton of going on. So definitely check back, subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I also want to do a thank you for a couple new members. I really appreciate the support. I mean, it's honest, when I'm working on these big projects and, you know, it kind of beats you up sometimes, it really makes you feel good to know that people enjoy sharing the hobby with me. People enjoy going on the journey with these tanks, and obviously supporting the channel and supporting my aquarium addiction. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing. It's an awesome hobby. So thank you again, and I'll see you guys soon.